If an engine were to come through Edward's station, they'd never know that Diesel was hidden at the back of the carriage sheds, silent as a mouse and listening closely to the outside world for those who might come to take him away, back to the scrapyards. Edward the Blue Engine had been kind enough to let Diesel stay in the sheds for a few days after learning what Diesel had been through at the scrapyards. Edward was a kind engine with a big heart, especially when it concerned scrap. Edward and Diesel had spent many nights together talking about scrap. Edward tried very hard to build up Diesel's confidence and felt that he was making great progress. "I know it's hard, Diesel, but I promise to do my best and help you face your fears," Edward often told the Diesel. "No one's ever tried to help me like you have, Edward. Thank you." Edward remembered how pitiful Trevor had been before he was saved from scrap and felt a similar responsibility to Diesel. But Edward knew that this situation was far different from Trevor's, and started to worry. If Diesel didn't return to the scrapyard soon, Edward thought, the scrap dealers would start to look for him, which could place Diesel and the railway in a whole lot of trouble. Edward knew the kind of people who owned the scrapyards. They were rude and rough, to be sure, but they were also greedy and would do anything to keep the smelters going. Edward had begun to worry so much about this that he was not running as well as he could. One afternoon, Edward puffed slowly down the line with his last goods train for the day. He was very tired. His driver and fireman were becoming concerned that soon he would need to go to the works to be looked over. Edward set down his trucks and let out a long sigh. "Edward, this cannot continue," his driver said sternly. "All this worry over Diesel has run you down. You're barely making steam as it is. Perhaps we need to send Diesel back to the scrapyards." Edward secretly agreed with his driver, if only to save Diesel from a worse fate, but he was feeling worn out too. Diesel had become a burden, and was a very hard secret to keep. Reluctantly, he conceded. "That settles it then. We'll handle this. You stay here." Edward's driver and fireman walked over to the carriage shed to tell Diesel the bad news. Edward instantly regretted his decision. What will happen to Diesel now, he thought. Suddenly, Diesel peered out of the shed in great protest. I can't go back. I can't." "You cannot stay here forever, Diesel. You must return," said Edward's driver. "Says who?" Diesel said. Then, Diesel peered over and saw Edward sitting in the siding. "Oh, I see," Diesel scoffed. Edward's heart sank as he saw the utmost look of betrayal on Diesel's face. I'm sorry, Diesel. It's for your own good," Edward cried, tears forming in his weary eyes. Without another word, Diesel crossed angrily over the points onto the main line, and was soon out of sight. Edward didn't know what to think or what to say. His driver and fireman did the best to console him, but Edward felt dreadful. The next day, Edward trudged down the line. He didn't feel well at all and couldn't stop thinking about Diesel and how he had gone against his promise, even though it was for the right reasons. His driver and fireman were worried. "Cheer up, Edward. Diesel will be fine." "I hope so," Edward sighed. Edward arrived at the harbour and uncoupled from his trucks. He dreaded going back to his station, knowing that Diesel had once been there safe and sound, but now was roaming helplessly looking for someone who could help him where Edward could not. Then, Edward looked over to the sidings and saw a train of wagons ready to be taken to the scrapyards for unloading. This gave him an idea. "Sir," he called to the foreman, "who's taking those trucks?" The foreman looked at his timetable. Bear's taking those," he said. I just talked to Bear," Edward lied. "I'll be taking them instead." The foreman and Edward's crew all looked very surprised. "Have you made the necessary arrangements?" the foreman asked. Yes, we have. All is arranged." The foreman nodded his head in approval and left Edward and his crew alone. "What is the meaning of this, Edward?" his driver asked. "I promised to help Diesel. I must talk to him. I must. Pulling this train is the only way I can get into the scrapyards to see him." Edward's driver and fireman reluctantly agreed. Soon, Edward was out on the main line, heading to the scrapyards. The sky was getting dark, and the fog was beginning to settle around them. Edward hadn't been on this part of the island in a long time, and felt a little scared. Odd shadows loomed over them as the moon rose overhead, and an owl hooted in the trees. Edward began to hear whirring and buzzing in the distance, and knew he was getting close. He approached the signal gantry guarding the entrance to the scrapyard beyond. A harsh voice blared over the speaker. "Who are you?" the voice asked. I'm here to deliver this scrap." "We don't allow steam engines in here." Edward gulped. He had forgotten that only diesels came here. Steam engines only came here to be scrapped. But Edward had to see Diesel and became desperate. I meant I was delivered with the scrap. To be scrapped. The voice hesitated for a moment. "Very well. I'm sending an engine to fetch you. Leave your crew here." Edward's driver and fireman could not believe it. "What are you doing?" they bleated. Edward shushed them and asked them to drop his fire to complete the illusion. A diesel that Edward had never met came and coupled up to him. As they entered the yards, Edward could see mountains and mountains of twisted metal rising before him. As they got closer, the fog lifted and he saw the outlines of old, rusty engines, their spirits having escaped their hollow shells long, long ago. Edward was placed into the line with the old engines. Soon, he was alone, cold, and frightened. "Hello, Diesel? Are you there?" Edward whispered. There was no answer, only the wind rustling by. "Diesel!" Edward said more loudly. A scruffy-looking workman called from a nearby shed. "That old black Diesel? He ran off a long time ago. Haven't seen him since." Oh no, Edward said to himself, his eyes widening. He realized that he had made a terrible mistake. Diesel was nowhere to be found. His big heart had gotten him into a lot of trouble. Soon there were men walking over with blowtorches and hammers. Edward was more frightened than he had ever been before. Another steam engine for scrap. I see. Pity. I like the blue paint on this one, said one of the workmen. The blowtorches were lit and raised close to one of Edward's buffers. He could feel the white-hot flame searing into the metal. It was excruciating, but then the pain ceased as soon as it had started, as a spotlight flashed from the walkway above. "That is quite enough!" boomed Sir Topham Hatt. "Sir!" Edward said, tears rolling down his face in relief. "Edward, I know you do anything for your friends, but doing this is a little too far." "Sir, I only wish to—" "Talk to Diesel, yes, I know. Perhaps it's time you did do just that." Diesel rolled into the siding where Edward sat. "Diesel!" Edward cried. "I'm so glad to see you." Diesel looked worried. "I'm glad to see you too, Edward. I wondered for a while after I left your yard, but something stirred within me. I could hear your voice in the back of my mind, so I decided to see Sir Topham Hatt and tell him about my situation. It was then that we heard that you had come here to find me." "I only wanted to apologize for not keeping my promise," Edward said. "But you did keep your promise." Diesel smiled. "How?" "When we heard you ventured here, I knew I needed to face my fears and rescue you from scrap, just like you did for Trevor." Edward was overcome with gratitude. He didn't realize that the pupil had become the teacher. "Let's get you home," said Sir Topham Hatt. Together, Diesel and Edward travelled a long distance back to the station. Diesel placed Edward in the sidings and started to leave. "Where are you going?" Edward asked. "Back to the scrapyards, of course. Sir Topham Hatt said that he wants me to work there for a while. He's bought 2 new twin diesels to run the scrapyard, and when they come, I'll be allowed back. As Diesel spoke, Edward heard a confidence in his voice that hadn't been there when he found Diesel hiding in the shed that long ago. He fell asleep that night with a feeling of relief that he made a difference in Diesel at last.